Welcome to podcast number 3 at Indie Pub News with Michael Gallagher. Today, we are very happy to welcome author and marketing specialist J.D. Lasica for his version of a book launch blueprint. Based on his recent experience, J.D. jumped into the indie pub fray by successfully launching his first novel, Biohack, a gender wars thriller. His intriguing near-future science fiction story touches the crime, medical, and legal thriller genre. Biohack, a character-driven adventure, features a strong female lead bolstered by in-depth research. Just to get us into the right mood here, JD, could you give us a sneak peek into the story in your Biohack Book 1, a gender wars thriller, that made the coveted hot new releases on Amazon after its release?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me here, Michael. Biohack has been a story in the making for a long time. I've been playing around with these characters in my head for several years, so I finally had some time to get them down on paper. So it's a story of a near future. Biohack is a near future conspiracy thriller that's set a few years in the future, involving a reproductive technology facility, and the story of a couple of women who sort of get pulled into a conspiracy without their knowledge. So I've been studying the genre quite a bit of high-tech thrillers, science thrillers, and I said, a lot of these authors are having a lot of success, so how can I do the same? And I finally got this down on paper, and my background is a combination of journalism and marketing, so I put together a marketing plan to get this out there, and just took it one step at a time, and we were lucky to, towards the end of the 30-day eligibility period, Biohack became a hot new release in several categories: medical thriller, techno thriller, conspiracy thriller, pulp thriller. It's kind of surprising to me. A lot of people who are starting out in this field don't really study the categories or even the keywords in Amazon, and I think that's something that's really important for any kind of success on Amazon, to sort of understand what's working for other authors and then try to emulate that. You are actually allowed, and most people don't know that, you're allowed to have up to 10 different categories to put your book in right at the outset. I think a lot of people are confused by that because Amazon, in the dashboard, the author dashboard, they only let you pick 2 or 3 categories. So you actually have to go into a separate login under Author Central and then send like an email message to request all these additional categories.
Oh, that's a great bit of information for aspiring authors there, JD. Thanks a lot. I noticed something else, too. If you don't mind, I saw that site, I guess you would call it a fake site, in which you imagined a website in the near future about family eugenics. Could you elaborate a bit on the fake site and how it fits into your writer's view?
Yeah, I didn't. You know what most authors do? So they put up like a book landing page, and they put up screenshots of their cover, and a couple of links, and it's all about, hey, buy my book. I thought it'd be more interesting to do something completely different. So I took the theme of Biohack, and it's basically what happens when we're able to sort of customize different qualities in your children. And I put together a site based on some research into fertility clinics and IVF clinics. And so it's called birthrightsunlimited.com. And it's named after the name of the biotech company in Biohack. So if you go to birthrightsunlimited.com, you'll see what looks like a kind of interesting site where you can actually nurture your child from day one. You can customize exactly how you want your future child to look like or what kind of qualities to instill. And I took a lot of photos from stock photo companies and just put together what a site like this might actually look like in 10 or 20 years. And it's a little bit chilling because a lot of people who come to this are kind of like, wow, this looks so realistic. I almost felt like, calling the phone number on here just to find out what was going on. But there's a disclaimer at the very top of the page that sort of links to the book itself. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see it's copyright 2025, Birthrights Unlimited. So it sort of gives some tip-off that this is not an actual fertility clinic site.
That's a sort of a really unique way to get your people, sort of a landing page idea, to get your people to look at your stuff in a different way. I was really intrigued by it when I saw it. I wonder if you could mention a little bit about what the CRISPR gene is, the CRISPR gene editing?
Yeah, there was a really interesting segment on 60 Minutes a couple months ago about CRISPR. It's actually an enormous advance in genetic engineering that came about just a few years ago, where scientists can now genetically modify a one-cell embryo to introduce particular kinds of changes to that fertilized egg so that you can identify what kind of color that you want to have for your kid's eyes or things like that. So nobody's using it for those kinds of purposes for enhancement right now. They're basically using it to screen out genetic defects, that sort of thing. So there's a really interesting debate going on right now about where do you draw that line about whether or not you can use genetic engineering techniques like CRISPR to actually enhance your future baby instead of just screening it for genetic diseases.
Boy, great research on all that reproductive technology for your thriller. How did you sift through all the info out there to get to the stuff that would fit into a thriller?
Yeah, it took about 3 or 4 months of research to actually get grounded in this. And if you're going to be writing about something that's pretty outside your sweet spot of what you need to just spend some time, immersing yourself in all the information that you can get your hands on. So a lot of it was actually podcasts. So I did a search in iTunes for the term CRISPR, and there are a whole bunch of podcasts, science podcasts, medical podcasts that are talking about all the kinds of issues and controversies swirling around it today. And I go on daily walks with my dog, and I load up my smartphone with all these podcasts, and just every day get a little bit more knowledgeable about the subject. And then I read a few books about it. There are a number of really terrific books on the subject. One written by the inventor, the discoverer of CRISPR, another one called The Gene. So it was basically just getting up to speed, and then you almost only want to take like 5% of what you're learning in these books and add it to your manuscript. So it's the iceberg effect, but you really need to know the other 95% before you can present the other 5% in an intelligent, believable way.
Okay, thanks a lot. Group of people supporting your launch, JD. Could you give us some details about how you formed your street team?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Some people call it a street team, others a launch team. I went to a couple of different sources. One is there's a local group of writers here called the Tri-Valley Writers, and I joined them. And I wasn't sure whether or not this was going to work out or not, but there are a lot of talented people here in the San Francisco Bay Area with their own writing careers. And about 8 or 9 of them actually joined my street team. And those are the kind of best people to get on your team, because They're not, like close friends, because Amazon doesn't want your friends to be reviewing your book, right? It's a little bit unethical to have it slanted in that way. And so they agreed to, read advanced copies, and they agreed to leave reviews. They were giving me some feedback right towards the end of the manuscript, and that was helpful too. So it's not all just a marketing ploy. It's also how to improve the actual final version of your book. So the Tri-Valley Writers group was a big part of this. I reached out on Facebook to different kinds of writer groups. There are a whole bunch, there are dozens and dozens of different kinds of groups on Facebook. And I would encourage people to sort of get out of your comfort zone a little and sort of invite people who you don't even know to take a look at your book. I sent out some invitations on LinkedIn to people who express interest in similar kind of titles. Would you be interested in looking at my book for free, reading it, and then leaving a review? So, I cast a wide net. I got ultimately about 150 people to join the team, which is a lot more than most people, I suppose. And as a rule of thumb, you can expect about a third of them to leave a review when the book goes live, and that's exactly what happened in this case. So I was pretty happy with that. And you just the one thing to keep in mind is there are different ways of doing this. I did it very hands-on. Instead of sending out like a MailChimp email blast to your entire team, I would contact them one at a time, generally through email, to ask whether, where they are in the process, whether they've read the book, whether, do they know that I've got this going live in a couple of weeks, can you get a review ready, that sort of thing. And even though it took a lot more work that way, I think the results were pretty good by using that kind of personal element.
Yeah, personalizing always helps. So your book sold very well at the outset. Did you add as well paid strategies to your process?
It was a combination. What I didn't know at the beginning, and which I knew, is that a lot of these book promo sites, there are like dozens and dozens of them out there. Some of them work, some of them don't work. A lot of them won't take your book if your book goes live and you don't have any reviews. So it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. You need some sort of traction with the book initially. You need to have those initial reviews up and live before they're going to consider spotlighting your book on their site for a fee, and their fees are anywhere from like $25 to $100 US. And so I did that. I started doing a few book promo sites. Those sort of paid off after 2 or 3 weeks of the book going live. I did a couple of Amazon ads. I did like one Facebook ad. And I learned later in the game about BookBub, which is like the 800-pound gorilla of the field. So, in fact, yesterday I just put through another BookBub ad. So all of them are different, because they're different ways of reaching different kinds of readers, and you have to have a strategy for each one.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your mailing list. You had an objective to rise your list from a small number to quite a large number over a period of time. Was that successful?
It's a work in progress. I think it's getting to where it needs to be. So I basically started from scratch. And a lot of authors will tell you, don't even bother putting out a book unless you have a big mailing list. But I wanted to sort of get my feet wet, test the waters, see if this is something I want to continue doing, and it is. So I started, with a handful of people that I knew that joined the mailing list. And then from there, you sort of use marketing strategies, giveaways, putting out like 2 or 3 or 4 chapters of your book on your website, your author site, to sort of entice people to see if this is the kind of thing that they might like. And so by the time the book came out, I had about 1,200 people on my mailing list. So ideally, I'd like to have that 2 or 3 times that for the next book when the next book comes out. So that's going to take a lot of work to, organically. It's not like people come to your site and they see a list and they say, take my email address. You sort of really have to entice them and go out of your way and proactively find ways to get them to do that. So one way I'm doing that right now is through a site that I created called Best of Indie, bestofindie.com. And if you go there, you'll see I'm doing, again, something different from what most authors do. Most authors, they will give you updates about their own book and their own plans and when their next book is coming out. Sometimes they'll have a special. But really, it's like once every 2 or 3 or 4 months, you'll hear from the author. I send out a weekly email to everybody on my list about the best bargains in independent fiction or nonfiction on Amazon. So, here are a bunch of free, really well done thrillers or fantasy titles or mysteries or sci-fi novels or 99 cents or $1.99. So they're all bargains. So there are a lot of people who probably wouldn't be all that interested in what I'm putting out every week if I'm just writing about myself, but they're interested in what's happening in the field, and everybody loves, a free ebook if it's of high quality.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. It moves us on well to the next question. Could you break down how much time you spend on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., in a day or in a week, in comparison to how much time you're spending writing now?
Yeah, I was an early Twitter adopter, so that, I've been on Twitter for over 11 years. I'm here in Silicon Valley, so that's not surprising, I guess. But so I'm probably spending too much time on Twitter. But I've got like 35,000 followers, so I figured, it's a nice place to sort of interact. I find Twitter more valuable for research, for connecting with other readers and other authors. I don't find it as useful for marketing Biohack or my books. And I think a lot of writers and authors, when I see them with their own Twitter accounts and every 10 minutes there's another tweet about, hey, buy my book, I think people get really turned off by that, and I don't understand why anybody would follow them. So that doesn't seem like a really good strategy. But social media is great for staying in contact with readers, with understanding the pulse of the public, with maybe even getting feedback on ideas that you have for your manuscript. I use probably Facebook more than Twitter for that, but it's not really a great sales mechanism. So I see a lot of people spending a lot of time on social media and thinking that's going to be the key to unlocking tons of sales for the books. It's one tool, but I don't think it's going to be the key strategy that makes it happen.
This has been really interesting. I wonder if you could talk about your next book a little bit.
Yeah. In the Biohack manuscript, towards the end, I have people signing up for my list and mentioning that my next book is going to be the second book in the Gender Wars thriller series, and I had a working title of Mixed Reality. I've now got a different kind of name for it, but I'm not going to announce it quite yet because I'm afraid somebody's going to snap it up. But basically, it's also in the same high-tech thriller genre, but it's more about virtual reality and augmented reality especially. And the kinds of things that I'm seeing here in Silicon Valley of where these new technologies are going to take us and how that's going to be impacting society as well. So, even though I'm using the same characters, a lot of the same characters except for the villain, and there's a new villain in here, they're coming over through the entire series, the protagonist, Caden, and her sidekick, Nico. Even though, you're focusing on all of those different characters. You want to keep it fresh. So about 20,000 words in, I want to try to keep it to about 80,000 words this time. And, I'm shooting to have it out in the spring.
Okay, well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I can't wait to pick up your next book.
Thanks, Michael. I'll let you know when it's coming out, and, good luck with this podcast. It sounds really interesting.
Okay, thanks a lot for talking to me.
Sure thing.
This has been podcast number 3 at Indie Pub News with Michael Gallagher, featuring J.D. Lasica, an indie author that had great success launching his first book, Biohack, a gender wars thriller. Don't forget to check J.D. out on Facebook and Twitter, and sign up for his innovative mailing list by Googling J.D. Lasica, Best of Indie, INDIE. See you soon, and thanks for listening.